Mr. Ferguson is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues from Minnesota. I want to thank you all for inviting us up here to a land with so many people with so many funny accents. Y'all all sound different than we do. Despite the fact that we sound different, I have noticed some very common threads that exist between farmers and producers here in Minnesota and those back home in Georgia. These are family-owned businesses in many cases that are based on a few things. Number one, you want a vibrant economy where you can provide for your family in. You know, you want to be part of a community with being a decent, safe place to live. You want a brighter future for your children with a strong, good education, preparing them for 21st century economy. And you want the freedom to be who you want to be in this great country and to be able to speak with a good Southern accent or Northern Minnesota accent, right, Pete? But at the core of that is American competitiveness. Because without a job and a strong economy and an ability to defend ourselves around the globe and here at home, we are weak. And all of the other things that we want for our families don't fall into place if we aren't strong globally. So there's been a lot of focus on trade, but I don't want us to ever lose the fact that we need to be always working on things that make America the most competitive place in the world to invest and do business, and then have the trade agreement come in on top is the icing on the cake. So, Mr. Scheffelbein, could you talk just briefly about how how much your input costs have gone up over the past couple of years? Describe a couple of those factors and the impact that has on your competitiveness in the global marketplace.
Yeah, costs have just gone enormously higher, and we're a high dollar use company anyway. But when you double $1 million or $2 million business, you're asking for a much larger line of credit. So it's huge, and its impact is immense. Then what you have is a occurrence like right now where we're in this drought, and you look at all those investments we made in all that infrastructure and all those commodities, and it just looks just incredible. So we're up 200% roughly across. The way my wife always says it, she gets a bill, you know what she says? Guess what? It doubled. And so that's kind of what we are facing.
So we don't need to lose sight of the fact that we need to be lowering input costs for the American farmer so that we can remain competitive around the globe. Mr. Wordish, you've got a situation where you've got farmers that have higher input costs, smaller margins. Talk to us a little bit about the impact on the monopolistic practices that exist in the processing side of this thing and in big business driving out family farms.
It's really all across agriculture. Mr. Scheifelein, as a beef farmer, does a tremendous job here. But in the meat processing industry, you have the four packers that control 85% of the slaughter capacity. The worst part about that is two of those are foreign owned, not even owned by United States companies. And that, the Packers and Stockyards Act was passed in 1921 because Congress, those of you right in front of us, decided to break up the meat packers at that time. And at that time, there was 5 of them that controlled that 85%. Now we have 4, and like I said, two of them are foreign owned. So we're in worse shape. That puts more dollars, instead of going into our local communities, they went overseas when they made the profits the last few years. We got the inputs on tar. We have a lot of corn here. We have just a few companies that provide all the fertilizer stuff too, and some of it's coming from the Ukraine or the Russia. But the same thing, you just have a few companies that dominate that industry. Tractor, machinery equipment, it's really all down the line. Chemical companies, that's the...
So safe to say that we have policies in place that are making American farmers less competitive and more reliant on other countries than we should. And I want to go to one more point here, Senator Bach. You've touched on a couple of things, and in your testimony you said that the policies that the administration is pursuing, shutting off mining in Minnesota, yet opening up agreements with other countries for rare earth minerals, it doesn't make sense. Talk to me a little bit more about that, because it seems to me that we are making ourselves less competitive with the policies that we have in place right now.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Representative Ferguson. If I could digress for a second, Mr. Chairman, I Googled lakes so that we can kind of get the record straight. And if you believe Google, Alaska has 3 million of them. Wisconsin has 15,000. And if you look at DNR's number, Department of Natural Resources in Minnesota, they say we have 14,380. If you look at how many are 10 acres or more, it drops to 11,842. And then everybody agrees Michigan has 11,000.
That's right.
So
That's right.
Really big.
Thank you, Senator Brock, for straightening that out.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. The problem we're creating is it's one of more than being not competitive. It's one of being incredibly vulnerable. I mean, we only have one very small nickel mine in this whole country, and it's in Michigan. It's the Eagle Mine in Michigan. Other than that, we produce none. And little cobalt, little lithium, these metals that are going to be in tremendous demand. The problem is we leave ourselves incredibly vulnerable. And if I'm China sitting right now and I think we're going to take Taiwan, guess what? They could put a strategy together and take it back, unite it, and there's not much we could do, because all they'd have to do is threaten to cut off our critical metals, and it would bring us to our knees. So whether it's a good idea to take it or not, I just think we're giving these other foreign governments incredible leverage over us by not having our own critical metals that we need for our medical devices, for everything that sustains life. And Mr. Chairman, if I could, I think part of the problem in this country right now is a growing number of people have lost their connection to the land, and they don't know where things come from any longer. And you know, the copper wire and the copper pipe doesn't come from Home Depot or Lowe's. It actually comes out of the ground. And I used to tell my Twin City colleagues, many are good friends, that when you get up in the morning and you put the milk on your kids' cereal, you ask them where the milk came from. And if they say the grocery store, you tell them it came from a cow. And I just think, as we get another generation disconnected from the family farms, kids don't understand where things come from. And I think it's creating a real problem for us and a vulnerability for us going forward.
Well said. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.